Hi, it's so great to see you.
Great to see you too. Thank you so much. I was hoping to see your happy face. So, for those of you who don't know Melanie, and Melanie has a daughter with Williams syndrome, we know Melanie for a long time now because of her involvement her involvement in the Canadian Williams Syndrome Association. And now she is an entrepreneur who's doing great things with Do Good Donuts. So I'm going to let her do most of the talking. And the first thing I would like to ask Melanie is, why donuts? And give us a little background about how you've been building this business to eventually, and I know you're already doing this in the farmers market, but creating jobs for people with disabilities.
I see a little face in the background in case you, it's
Oh,
the kind of face you'll all
please show
recognize.
her. Alma!
Hi, Alma says
Hi,
hi.
sweetheart.
Right there.
Alma,
You're in the picture.
will you remind us how old you are, sweetheart?
How old are you, Alma?
8.
Oh, wow, big girl. Good to see you.
Nice. So nice to see you too.
Girando.
Yeah. Okay, off you go.
Mira
So
So
that was the inspiration right there. Not
there
we
you
don't
go.
need to say anything else.
That happy little chicken right there. Yeah. So why donuts? So it's funny. It's actually a Williams Syndrome connection that a discussion that happened at the WSA convention in what year are we at? 2016, I would guess. What was that? Columbus?
Yes.
And I have some amazing friends at the Canadian Association for Williams Syndrome. As you mentioned, I've been involved with the program since Alma was about 6 months old. And there was a family there that was telling me the story of what it's like once their child is now in her late teens. And that was that they were thinking of packing up their stuff and moving to a bigger city because they felt in their small community there wouldn't be a place for their daughter to get a job, which struck me as funny because working in advertising in my day job, I worked on so many programs because I was always the person pulled into the corporate social responsibility programs that talked about all the great things they had going on to hire young people with disabilities, except at the store level in the community that wasn't being translated. So I thought if I could create a program that helped connect the partnerships and relationships I had in the advertising world to these large hiring partners that would allow them to see young people who were succeeding at work, to make it easier to create the bridge between programs that teach you how to have a job and the employers that say that they'll hire you. So the idea was to create a business that sole purpose was to bring young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities in for paid work to teach them how to have a job on the job so they could then move on to work in other places. And that's how Do Good Donuts was born. And why donuts? I'm in Canada. Donuts are a big deal in Canada. We have Tim Hortons on every corner. But Tim Hortons also has breakfast items. It has lunch items. It has coffee. It has cold drinks. It has hot drinks. So it's a model that would allow for training in lots of different ways. We bake our own donuts in-house, which offers the ability to potentially work at a grocery store in a bakery or a restaurant in a bakery, but also once we move out of our farmers market and into a full cafe setting, we'll have coffee and tea. We'll have the donuts we make in-house. We'll have easy lunch items. We'll have sandwiches, pizzettes, and be able to then look at the potential employers, find out what they need to be able to hire people, what the young people need to know, and then onboard that into our training to make it an easy connection.
That is a fantastic model. You mentioned to me that you are not necessarily going to just hire people who, like Alma, and that Alma has a sibling, and that
True.
He was very happy to hear that he could probably work there and learn some things as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, of course. I think it's really important there's two parts to this story. One is, as someone who's raising a child with a disability and also raising a child who does not have Williams syndrome, it's really important for me to create a life for Alma that is separate from the lives that she has in our family, that she should have a meaningful place in the community. She should make her own money, and that she should be able to make friends and potentially go on the pathway to independent living. And that gives my son a chance to follow his own dreams and his own passions and create the life he wants. The other part of that story is Do Good Donuts is an integrated workplace. So it's not just hiring young people with disabilities and then managers who don't have people with disabilities. It's about creating a workforce where there's 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 trainees on any given shift who might have Williams syndrome or autism or other disabilities, but they're working with typical staff. Because if you move on to a job somewhere else at McDonald's or at your grocery store, you're not going to be the only person with there's a good chance you'll be the only person with a disability in your workplace. So how do you fit in? What are the social skills you need? How do you follow traditional work protocols? And we have what I call a sheltered work environment, in that everybody there knows the reason we're there is to do training, but people show up to our jobs with the independence and responsibility that we would give to any of our employees, so that they feel that they have the confidence in their own skills to go on and work somewhere else. And Shane
Perfect.
can't wait. He is so excited that he's going to get to work at Do Good Donuts before Alma. I can't even tell you. Yeah.
Well, why should Alma be the only one spreading joy in your family?
Right?
That's really nice. And I imagine just the lessons learned in all of this are just invaluable
There's so
for
many
the
lessons.
community. Go ahead.
So many lessons. I think right now we're running a pilot program. So we've done all the background work. I say we, it's mostly me, but I do have a board of directors who are helping. We've done all the background work and all the research to understand. I've never owned a cafe before. I've never run a training program. I learned to make donuts to be able to do this. I do have a baking certificate from a college. It's a lifelong passion. But our pilot program, which gave us a farmer's market stall from May 16th, finishing October 31st, and allowed us to hire 3 young adults with disabilities to work with us on Saturdays and Sundays, doing food production and also selling in the market.
Can I interrupt you for one quick second?
Yeah.
Since you're going to be at the farmers market till October 31st, remind people what farmers market and what time.
Yes, if you're in Toronto, we are at the Leslieville Farmers Market in Greenwood Park. We're there from 9 a.m. until 2 p.m. We sell donuts and cookies every day. Sometimes we have a special baked good, and we're really hard to miss. We're a big white tent with a giant pink donut, and we have our young adults with disabilities working with us in the tent. And we also, there's a shift where one of our employees works with us in the donut kitchen early in the morning, and then 2 more work at the tent. So you'll get to meet our trainees in action. And I think in terms of lessons, the biggest lesson I have learned, because I wasn't really sure what to expect, is I had some pretty high expectations, because I strongly believe that Alma and everyone I have met with Williams syndrome is perfectly capable, has the agency and ability to work, part-time in a job that they like. I really do. But I wasn't sure exactly what that would entail. And when I interviewed the number of people who applied for these first jobs, working with us 8 hours a week, it's a part-time job. They had when I asked them questions, they had some ideas of what their limit would be. Would they be able to work the cash register? Would they be able to make change? Would they be willing to be the first person to greet customers? And many of them said, I don't think so. I think I'd be better in the background. I think I would enjoy doing something that's not quite that forward facing. And now all 3 of our employees are working the cash register, making change, and greeting customers as a first point of contact. 2 of them are working in the bakery, doing donut glazing and finishing, packing the donuts, and all 3 of them are able to independently prepare a cookie recipe with the ingredients that we have, follow the recipe, and finish the dough. And then we scoop and then scoop the dough, and then we bake at another time because we run out of time in our training. And the idea that these young people who in their interviews thought that some of the things we were asking for would be far outside of their capabilities, in 2.5 months have figured out how to do all of these things, tells me that my high expectations were certainly not high enough, and that I think the sky's the limit. I think we have so much opportunity waiting for our young people if they have the right kind of environment and the right kind of supported training and a kind of program that's built to work for their strengths and then supports the area that they need extra help in.
Totally agree. Especially important in this October of 2021. And I read an article the other day about, worker shortages. Well, if everyone's encouraged to work and given the opportunities, might that also help that situation right now? The article said yes.
I think so. I think that there's really I think that there's really a golden opportunity in this time with all of the discussion around diversity and inclusion in general, and specifically around the labor shortage in the food industry, which
Yes.
has always been, somewhat tough to keep employees. The all of the research shows that young people who have disabilities who come into jobs are more dedicated workers. They stay longer. They're committed to their role. They become a beacon of hope for the community, that if there's two different places that have the same thing, people will go to the place that feels like they're supporting the community. It makes excellent business sense. And really, having a place to go and be part of a community is really what we all deserve and what the community should be creating for us. And I think it's really hard for people to imagine what that looks like when they can't see people doing the jobs. And for us, a lot of our customers come back every week and they know our employees' names. They talk to them, they ask them about their week. It's one of the joys of their visit to our market. And it's not a small market. We have about 3,500 people who come through every Sunday in foot traffic. So, it's a busy spot. But people make an effort to stop and chat with our people to see what they're doing. They applaud them on their improvement from the beginning of the year until now. They can really see the difference working with us is making. And it's been just such an exciting moment for me to see the life that's waiting for Alma, because I've seen what amazing things have happened for the young people we have now.
It's fantastic. So
Yeah.
a couple of things. So I know you. So I know you have a degree in baking, and you also have a very extensive marketing and advertising background. So what if somebody wanted to do this, but they don't have those things and they don't know how to gather a board of directors? What advice would you give a parent who wanted to do a business model of something like this when they don't know those things?
I think there are so many opportunities, and I have gone all over the place. Again, I'm kind of an overachiever, so you need to just put that aside.
Love it.
But I've seen so many other models that are working so effectively. I've seen small cafes that have opened in partnership with an existing organization within a community. So if there's an ARC Industries in your community, or a community living in your community, you can help with a coffee stand right within that building that they work in, or in a local spot. There are some places where they've taken an existing business and added sort of a support person that consistently runs people through that little cafe. I know one that's in a library, and the organization, a small parent-run organization, has taken over part of the service of the library cafe to help into an existing food business, an existing space, existing customers, and they just run a little training program out of that. I think there's lots of times, there's another one called Moji Coffee, where a whole bunch of like-minded people got together and all brought one skill. So there was one person who was good at marketing, and somebody else who was good at HR, and somebody else who was good at bookkeeping. And they all got together with the person who knew how to run a cafe and built a space. And they have a huge group, and all of them just give a little bit. So I think depending on your personality and depending on, the world that you live in, I think there's lots of opportunities to find a lot of like-minded people. People reach out to me every single day on Facebook. There are a lot of people who are looking for ways to find pathways for their young people. And I think it's just a matter of having some conversations, sending a couple of emails, and then seeing if, something sticks and there's a way to move forward.
So tell us about the timeline from the ignition of the idea and to getting it into the farmers market. Like, how long has that process taken? How many years?
It has been, well, it was 2016 when I had
Oh,
the inkling.
yeah.
In 2018, I went into an incubator program for employment social enterprises, which are businesses that take their profits and invest them back into their social purpose. At the end of 2019, I'd finished a business plan and a feasibility study. We incorporated at the beginning of 2020. We went looking for grants in March of 2021, which, as you imagine, was a terrible time to go looking for grants for a food business. No, in 2020. And then on a whim, I applied for the farmers market, knowing we had all of this background work done, and we got the spot. And on March 16th, we were told we would be in the farmers market, and the farmers market started on May 16th. So we had 9 weeks to go from all of this paperwork and planning to having a product, having food, having trainees and our board working and all of the things, all of that start. It was 9 weeks from plan until working food business. And then we had our young people hired about 4 weeks after that and starting to work with us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does the farmers market give you the same contract, or do they take into account that you are an entrepreneurial business that's working with people with disabilities? Did they give you any breaks or anything like that?
Well, they didn't give us a break on the rate for the market, but they do have a sign-up sheet for volunteers. So they supply us with volunteers every week. We have
Oh,
2 to 4 volunteers who work with us every week. And then one of their partners has a kitchen. And so we've now moved into their commercial kitchen at a local community organization on Saturdays, where we do our training and we make our cookies. And they don't charge us for that. So that's free of charge to us. So, I mean, we do have expenses, but at the end of the summer, we've managed to make as much money as we've spent. So we're in is it the red? Which is the good one? The black? I never know.
Black is good.
We're in the black.
Yes.
We managed to make our money back. We've had 3 people working with us all this time. We have a loyal following of customers who are there every week. And the most exciting thing for me is I see families come from all over the GTA who bring their people. They bring their baby with Down syndrome.
You have to remind people what GTA means.
Oh, sorry, the Greater Toronto Area. So that,
yes,
you know, in the States,
we are in the U.S., but Melanie is in Canada, and I just didn't know if everyone knew that.
So I don't know how you guys consider like there's the city proper, and then there's all the surrounding like suburbs. Yeah. So for us, the GTA is Toronto, and then that includes all the suburbs. So people will drive an hour and a half to come into our market, because although you guys in the States have a number of initiatives like this, some of them which are very successful and franchising all over.
Biddy and Bose is one that comes to mind.
Biddy and Bose, yeah. I've been to visit them a number of times at various locations.
Speaking of which, you told me that you actually kind of went on a road trip in the United States to do some research. Tell us a little bit about that, because that's pretty fascinating.
I did. I've been on a few of them now. So I visited, I went down to the southern states and I visited shops outside of Atlanta, in Nashville, in Savannah, in Charleston, there wasn't one in Green. Anyway, I went on a 2,000-kilometer road trip where I drove around and mapped out all of the best, like all the donut shops that were noted as being the best of the best, and then all of the cafes I could find that were also hiring or training or supporting people with disabilities. Then I did the same thing in Boston. I went out to Peabody, Massachusetts. I traveled around Boston. I was just back in Boston, so I went to the new Biddy and Bose there. And I have 2 other trips mapped out. One of them goes along through, there's one in Rhode Island and in down by Washington, D.C. and Pittsburgh. So there's sort of a drive that goes all the way down from Toronto and visits about 7 more spots. And there's a road trip that leaves in Savannah and goes around past Wilmington and around the bottom and back to Savannah that has 13 places to visit. So depending on where you are, there are a lot of cafes, and some of them are quiet. Some of them you don't find them on social media. They're just small little places. But if you dig, there are lots of opportunities, existing opportunities out there to talk to the people and find out what they're doing.
But not only that, but hello, followers, if you're looking for a fun family road trip, instead of doing something like, what is it, diners, dives, and whatever that, do what she said about the 13 companies that employ people with disabilities. That's a wonderful little trip in a beautiful area.
You really live, every time I leave one of these journeys, I feel so much more hope, because there's a lot of times. I just had the call with the special education teacher today, planning all the appointments. I spend a lot of time in the weeds. And when I go and visit these places and I see everybody and they're happy and they're succeeding, and sometimes they have a bad day and sometimes they have a good day, but it really does give me a different picture of what I see for Alma's future than the one that if I just listen to everybody who tells me all the things that, are maybe gaps in where she is.
No, that's a good point. And it's also good that you she's only 8. So, this is something that parents and caregivers need to think of before their children are 16 or 17. They need to start making a plan. You mentioned a few organizations that you can, if you didn't want to start your own business, you know some organizations that you could find out about employment in general. Do you mind listing the ones that you are mostly aware of?
Well, many of them are here in Canada, but ARC Industries,
Yes,
I
I
know,
think this is
I
we
know,
talked
and I
about.
know I know they have, I think they present different ways in different communities, but I think there are certainly chapters that are doing an excellent job of that. There are a number of college programs now that you guys have.
Yes.
We're starting to grow in college programs, and those are excellent opportunities as well to find out not just what's in the college program, but what are the succession plans for the students. And often they will tell you where they're placing their students or what's happening in the employment section.
Mhm.
And it's not often in the paperwork, but when you call them up and ask them, there's actually a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes. There are, as you mentioned, there's Beatty and Bose and some other companies that are starting to have greater reach and presence in other communities. And you don't have to buy a franchise to take advantage of that opportunity because they're hiring people to work in them, and you can be a supportive parent. We have Canadian community living. Do you have community living in the US?
We may. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer
That's
to
a
that.
big one. Like that's
We
in
might call
every,
it something else.
yeah, that's in every community across Canada. So if there's anyone here from Canada, community living is an excellent option, and they exist in almost every community in Canada. And I think there are a lot of faith-based groups that have um, various approaches to employment. Obviously, that's a whole can of worms, and I don't want to get into that. But if you happen to be in a group that has a faith-based community within your community, it's worth reaching out to them, because while you may not have it directly in your community, they may, have attachments to things outside in the
Absolutely.
neighboring community. And then through the school boards as well, through the extended special education programs, a lot of time those teachers, especially if they've moved from school to school, are an endless resource of places that you can go and mine them for knowledge of things that have been successful for former students. And
Mhm.
some parents don't ask, so they don't often get that question. But if you reach out to them and have some discussions, a lot of times they become excellent resources as well.
Very good point. When you mentioned the college programs, I have been doing a series of, posts about people who are going to some of those college programs. And an organization in the United States called Think College, which we've partnered with. They've come to speak at our conventions. They are a really good resource for finding those college programs, and they probably have some resources about employment as well, and documentation on what these college programs can lead to. So Think College is also a good resource.
Yeah, and I think the college programs may not be for everyone, but if you can find out their resources on employment, there might be people who could move into employment who wouldn't necessarily be well suited to leave home and go to college. Some
Mhm.
people are, some people aren't. So it's worthwhile
Well,
tapping into their resource.
college is also expensive, so it's not accessible to every family. So there's some other resources that can happen, which is a very good point.
Absolutely. And to be honest, I am certain when people started saving for college, there was at the time that these students are going to college now, it didn't look like there would be an opportunity. So there's also a little bit of a gap, and it's here in Canada as well, that parents hadn't been necessarily prepared for college because it just wasn't an option. So
Mhm.
you looked at the resources in other ways, say, how else could I spend this money to give my child the best future? So nobody can, like, I think that some of these programs, personally, need to recognize that you're looking at cohorts of kids who, when they went into school, the parents might have heard that they didn't have a hope. We were told Alma didn't have a hope. She wouldn't ever work. She wouldn't go to college. She wouldn't
Mhm.
get a job. She would never live alone. And I'm sure I'm not the only parent that's heard that. And she's only 8, so
You not.
that college conversation is fraught with complication in the funding
Yes.
department. Yeah.
Yes. I'm sorry that you were told that, and I know many of our followers can relate, but we know that we're changing the narrative on that with
Oh, absolutely.
everyone's help. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so how are the donuts and cookies?
Oh, the donuts and cookies are
Because you can't.
delicious.
It's great to support, people for jobs, but not if they're not delicious.
Oh my gosh, you have to have a great product. People will come to you once because you're doing something great, but they won't come back if your product isn't delicious. So we've been written up in our Toronto food blog, like, online newscast. We've been featured on 3 of our national news networks. One of the party leaders for our political system up here, we have a 3-party system, mainly. There's some fringes, but one of the 3rd-party leader came by our tent, was really excited, has been wearing our t-shirt on his Instagram. So yeah, we're getting a lot of buzz about the food. We're getting a lot of buzz about the initiative, and we have a really warm community who's ready to support wherever we end up next. It's been great.
I'm so glad. I'm impressed because you're doing more than just offering jobs. You are creating futures and a community, and it's a whole package. And we're really happy to have been able to talk to you today.
Amazing. Yeah, our mission is to change how people think about employing young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
What was the thing you said about sprinkles? You have a little saying about sprinkles.
Rainbow sprinkles can change the world.
I can imagine.
Yeah, it's been a real honor actually to be able to do this. I feel very excited that it's me at the heart of it. But there have been I just see Steph Sims. If you go and look at our logo, my friend Steph Sims, who's just joined, was the one who designed the logo for us. There have been so many people like Steph who, when she heard about what we were doing, just stepped up and helped without question. And all of those people, hi Steph, person after person after person, doing that has meant that this is actually a thing. It's real and it's alive. And we're really hoping that we can raise the funds to move to a cafe within the next year.
It's a great goal, and we look forward to following you and seeing how that all pans out.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
We have faith that it will. So hopefully we can actually come and visit you in Canada soon to check it out. From where the WSA offices are, it's only about a 4.5-hour drive to that farmer's market.
Yeah, that's true. And you never know.
Toronto traffic notwithstanding.
My sister's in Windsor, so maybe one day I'll get up at the crack of dawn, grab some donuts, and drive them out to you guys.
You are welcome anytime, and not just because of the donuts.
Everybody says that, but the first thing I ask about is the donuts.
Well, you can't blame them. You can't. All right, okay. All right, great. Anything else? I think we've had a great conversation. I appreciate you telling everybody about your plan and how it's going. And does Alma want to say goodbye, or is she?
Oh, she's gone off.
Okay. We got to see her.
If anybody wants to follow our journey, you can find us at dogooddonuts.ca, and it's donuts, DONUTS. You can follow us on Instagram. You can email me any questions or message me online any questions. If you're thinking about starting something like this within your own community, I'm happy to help or at least put you in the right direction.
That's
and
awesome.
Our lovely friends at Outshine Labels, also entrepreneurial WS mom, have some Do Good Donuts merchandise that they're selling on our behalf to help us meet our goal. So we have a super adorable Rainbow Sprinkles Can Change the World t-shirt that Alma's wearing, I think, in the shot you had. But if you do want to help support and wear some cute donut stuff, Jess is running that shop over at Outshine Labels, and
which is great. We posted a post today with links to follow you and Outshine Labels and look at the merchandise. So if anyone wants to check that out, you can find it in a post earlier today.
But you don't need to buy anything if you need advice. Just send me a message. I'm always happy to help.
Yes, of course. That's really generous. Thank you. All
Absolutely.
right. Thank you so much, Melanie. It's been a pleasure to see you and talk to you. This is our first official Instagram Live, and we'll do more. But I think that you were so informative and lively. And if anyone wants to join us, reach out, because we are looking to engage more. And Melanie, you are first, and we appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, I'm so honored. Well, I really hope that
we've done live stories. We've done live stories and everything, but this is yeah. So thank you so much for joining.
Well, thank you for being such a gracious host.
Thanks everybody for joining us.
It was really nice to talk to everybody.
All right. Thanks, Melanie.
Bye.
Bye.